Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the ninth episode of the Tales from the Prick podcast. And if you hear me talking Scottish, it's because I have a fucking guest from Scotland today. From Silent Hill, NK country, ladies and gentlemen, the Sultan of Silent Hill, former ICW World Heavyweight Champion, former two-time Square Go briefcase holder, ladies and gentlemen, Chris motherfucking Renfrew. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Fucking brilliant intro. You speak better English than I do, to be honest. So
you think my Scottish accent is good? It made justice?
oh yeah, the fact you used the word "fucking" within 3 words was you swore enough. So you're officially Scottish. We've invited you in.
Yes. All right. I hope I'm gonna come over someday. And just as we're gonna start the interview, the first question I wanna ask you. For those who don't know, Chris Renfrew is not only a retired professional wrestler who did a lot of things in the ring. He bleed buckets for the crowd. He did pretty much everything from comedy to deathmatch wrestling. And but is also a student of the game. He's always been. So my first question is that you're known on Facebook for your wrestling opinions. Like you drop opinions from morning to evening when you don't work, when you don't do your own stuff. So my question is, how did you got invested in professional wrestling in the first place?
I was 5 or 6 years old, and that's when it was the tail end of the rock and wrestling era. So essentially, when I was like 5, 6 years old, it was Macho Man, Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, and that sort of roster, and that was aimed at my age group. So it just captivated me from a very young age. And then, like everyone else, I paid a wee bit of attention, but I was about 13, 14 when the Attitude Era started. So again, I was the exact right age for the product that they were producing. So it just sort of stuck from there. And then when I was 19, I found out there was a wrestling school, because you didn't think that existed outside of America, really. This was, I'm showing my age here. We're going back to 2004. The internet wasn't quite the machine and tool it is now. So, wrestling schools and such weren't at your fingertips, or at least I thought. So that's pretty much how I got involved. In terms of a fan, it was just, it happened to me. I was the right age for wrestling, and that was getting pushed towards me.
So there's an extra question about this. How did your view changed from being a wrestling fan to be a professional wrestler?
As I say, it just sort of, I found out a school was there, and you have to let go of being a fan once you get involved to a certain level. That's something I'll say to anyone that is going to get involved. And that's not just wrestling, that's like music or acting or anything at all. Once you learn all the tricks of the trade, you're saying goodbye to your fandom to become a professional. At least that's the theory anyway. So that transition should happen naturally at the training school if you're taught the right etiquette, the right attitude, things like that. And it's hard to just, it's hard to be as much of a fan when you know everything that's going on, when you know how the tricks work. It's something I've rediscovered once I left. I've kind of watched it back and kind of got my fandom because I'm not backstage anymore. But once you're involved in it and it becomes your everyday life, that's the transition there.
Yeah, you turn from being part of the fandom to having a fandom, and
yes,
you actually had one. So I can imagine it was a game-changing decision to be a professional wrestler. So. And my second question, just about wrestling in the ring. Back in June 2016, you were in Italy for a show of Adriatic Special Combat Academy, ASCA for those who know, and you got one-on-one with Kazama and literally turned his chest purple in a very violent match. So many people say that in Italy there's plenty of talent talking about workers and stuff like that. But what I want to ask you is, how did you feel working in front of an Italian crowd, and how did you feel staying in an Italian backstage for the most part?
That was one of my favourite memories in wrestling at that time frame, or ever. The fact that I got to go to Italy and I was brought over based on the ICW thing was just huge in itself, and it's just a beautiful country. You wrestle a lot later than we do. I think I wrestled at like midnight or something like that, and there's a lot more matches. But the backstage vibe was cool. The fans were the best. me and the Italian fans have always had a real connection. I think it's because Italians and Glaswegians were quite similar. We're dead passionate humans, and when we love something, we really express it. Same as when we hate something. So I think that's carried over past the language barrier that they've, you've accepted me almost as one of your own. And I couldn't speak highly enough. Everyone that brought me over, the way I was treated there, they made us feel like big stars. They made us feel like the wrestlers from TV, put us in nice hotels. We got to go exploring, got to see Milan afterwards. The next day, we stayed a bit longer. I can't say anything but positive things. And yeah, the match was pretty violent, but that was his idea. He went, I know what you're like, so let's go for it. And I went, well, you said it first, so I'm not going to hold back. But extremely, that's one of my favourite memories was going from wrestling just locally and then to be able to travel to another part of the world and they know who you are because of what you did locally. That's a cool experience.
Yeah, that's not the case that you told that we treated you like they treated you like a star, because in Italy there's not plenty of international wrestling. It's actually not plenty of professional wrestling. So every time an international star comes out and you were, I think, at the peak of your popularity at the time here in Italy and maybe also in Scotland when you came back for the ICW team of Mark Dallas. So you were at the peak of your popularity. And every time we have an international guest, we try to make him feel at home, comfortable. And I remember Davey Blaze wrote a thing on Facebook about like the Italians brought us to eat pizza and they offer you lunch and dinner. That is like Italian tradition. We always do that. We can, just as Scottish can do without breakfast, we can't do without food. That's what it is.
We all share the same interests. We love food. We love wrestling, football. It just felt like, I felt more at home in Italy than I do when I go to Edinburgh. And that's true because...
Fuck Edinburgh.
Fuck Edinburgh. Well said. See, you're fucking not just Scottish. You're Glaswegian now. That's like Scottish times two.
Yeah, Edinburgh is the fucking pussy place. Always been.
You said it, my man.
Fucking radical chic bastards. Glasgow the way.
You're putting me to shame with the fucking swearing here. I'm going to have to catch up. Fucking bollocks.
Fucking bollocks. So, talking about my personal vision, as long as I'm a fan, but I try to be a student of the game, even though I've never stepped foot in the ring except once. As a manager, but it was shit in front of 50 people. So,
listen, I've done shows in front of 6 people. Here's a story. In the NAK's first ever match as a tag team, me and BT Gunn, there was 6 paying customers in the crowd. So, that 50, 50 doesn't seem that bad when 6, there was more wrestlers than crowd members. So, you've seen the shit time, so don't mock 50. That's actually not bad for a first gig.
The matter is there were 50 occasional people. They weren't actually fans. But, the important thing is to put us on the seatbelt. So whatever. But I've also had this personal vision about wrestling. In the last episode of your podcast, you were talking about the importance of storyline, storytelling, stories in general in professional wrestling. So I think that in professional wrestling, everything can be enjoyable with a solid story in the background. What, in your opinion, makes a storyline great?
It has to be relatable, or it has to be interesting to start with. You have to be interested in the protagonist, the antagonist, or the situation happening. That's quite a hard question because there's so many different ways a storyline can become good. For me, a prime example of the best storyline is Steve Austin, Bret Hart, because it was as simple as Bret was coming back and he had to beat Steve Austin to get his title shot at the December pay-per-view. But that got Austin's back up, and they just started that rivalry and it just escalated. And it's when the best feuds are almost organic as well. Like when people have got the right chemistry, you can't force. I think everything's too scripted now. I think that it's like, right, here's your script, like it's a Hollywood movie. I don't think Steve Austin and Bret Hart were getting handed scripts. There might have been direction. We want you to do this, this, and this. But I think in this generation, I think that there's a lot of guys that aren't allowed to be themselves anymore. And I think that's hindering a lot of the stories. In terms to go back to your original question, there's lots of elements that could make a good story, but main thing is it's doing what it's meant to do. Is it meant to make you laugh? Is that its purpose? Is it meant to make you hate one person over the other? Is it meant to just be about pure wrestling? You know, it could be a feud based on respect that devolves or evolves into something else. So there isn't really a set defined answer, in my opinion, on what makes a good story, because sometimes you don't even know it's going to be a good story until it is as good as it is.
Let's put in an easier way, like let's say we are in let's say we are in I don't know, a promotion like ECW, for example. What ECW did great, in my opinion, is my favorite promotion ever, classic ECW, is the fact that they didn't give a fuck, but they used to portray it like human personalities, extremizing it. Like the Sandman was, and I think it was you who said that, the Sandman was a father who was an alcoholic, but he liked to beat up people.
Yeah.
So you could relate, like you had issues with alcohol, you could relate to the Sandman in some way. You were a reject at school, you could like feel near to Raven, for example.
Yeah.
So like in a certain context, if I can understand what you're saying, making a good story is about like accentuate the positives, make the characters.
Yeah, exactly. That's correct. Paul Heyman said you get the best out of the people and you hide the negatives. I think people are expected to do everything.
Yeah.
That isn't always the case. Someone might be really the 10 out of 10 in the ring, but can't talk. Someone might be really good at talking, but isn't as good in the ring. I don't see why everyone has to be everything now. And that was what ICW and ECW did. They looked at someone and went, what is your main skills? What do you bring to the table? And they pushed that forward instead of, I mean, WWE or Goldberg's an example. When Goldberg was in WCW and he's just smashing through people, that's what people wanted to see. That was as simple as that, the streak. So when he came to WWF and they're making him sell and they're making him go in 25-minute matches with The Rock and Triple H, you didn't want to see that because that was not Goldberg's strength. He's a monster. He's an absolute smashing machine. I think that's as well when you know, especially when a character knows what they want to be as well. See, when someone's got depth, Raven, prime example, he knew exactly what he was trying to get across with that character. So when he spoke, it was believable. When he moved, it was believable. When he did everything, you believed it because he was so invested in the story. That's what I found when I was into my stories, it really mattered if I cared myself because you're going to get the most out of someone. And I'm not saying you're not going to put effort in if you don't like the story or whatever, but see, when you feel it, you can get out a bit more. And I think promoters and people that allow, you know, a lot of the wrestlers know better than anyone what they want to be or how to put it out. They might not be 100% correct. It might need direction. But I think it's a combination of elements. As you say, ECW is one of the prime examples. Their booking strategy from 95 through 98 was, you know, some of the best. And it was a Hardcore Heaven 95 I put on the other day. And just the way they introduced characters, it was so subtle. It wasn't over the top. The way they built stories through the night. They also kept feuds going. It just seemed so unpredictable. And it was just a good fun watch.
Talking about unpredictable, if I can remember correctly, Hardcore Heaven 95 was the chair riot after Terry Funk and Cactus Jack. No?
This was Hardcore Heaven 95 was Shane Douglas's last show.
All right.
It was just a jump. Francine debuted. The Pitbulls turned on Raven and Dreamer.
I think there was the Type A death match between the Rotens.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. But they used Bill Alfonso to be the heel because they knew that everyone's going to cheer the violence. So it sparked heat. They created an authority figure. The whole thing was just the fact that it looked so good today. And I know a lot of people say with ECW and some products, they're a product of their time. That's a very used term. Like, I'm a product of my time. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think things that are truly great, any movie, song, wrestling match will surpass its time when it's good enough. And that show, for example, is that. And it's purely down to the emotions and the feeling produced with great storytelling.
That's why I think Mel Brooks films still work at our day, personally.
What's that,
Like,
sorry?
that's why I think maybe just to put an example on the table, Mel Brooks films still
Yeah,
works
yeah,
today.
yeah,
It is timeless, fucking
yeah.
timeless. You
To create timeless, yeah.
you're still gonna have like alcoholics or rejects in the 2021, but
Oh,
you can't
even more.
even more if you want.
Aye.
But you can be into a friend of mine once told that WWE shouldn't put like Great Balls of Fire as an name pay-per-view in 2017 because it is a fucking like 50s title movie
Throwback.
movie
Yeah.
title. Like too much throwback is the worst in my opinion.
Yeah. There's it's you don't want to be a throwback, you want to be a legend of your time. A throwback's something that comes out for a nostalgia pop. When you become immortal, you become bigger than that. Do you know what I mean by that? Like in the sense of like Steve Austin, we still talk about him today. He retired 18, 19 years ago. That's surpassing your time. And if you're truly great, you're not just a product of your time. But
Yeah, I think you're right about this. Steve Austin is like in the 80s he was in the Hollywood Blondes, and by the way, Hollywood Blondes are my favorite tag team in the history of professional wrestling.
okay.
I'm a huge Brian Pillman fan, and I think you are too, from what you publish on the social media. And like it's still good to see. You can see it's 80s stuff, but still good, still entertaining, and it lasts through the time. Next question, by the way, is that in the latest year, I've already talked about wrestling, so I just wanna dive into something a little bit more serious.
Okay.
No offense intended for professional wrestling, of course. In the last few years, you've been very supportive on the social media about the theme of mental illness, mental health, and stuff like that. Uh, and for those who are listening right now, who are maybe like struggling or just ask themselves how to maintain their mental health, what do you suggest? Like, I know it's an hard question to answer in a short period of time, but like, what would you do to avoid that?
Well, my personal circumstance is first thing you need to do is come to the admittance. You can't fight yourself, because if you're not willing to at least try and better yourself or try and get better yourself, no one's going to be able to help you. Especially when you're as stubborn and loud and angry as me. I know best. And when you get to that mind frame as well, it's quite, for lack of a better term, selfish. You think you're the only one that feels like this. You think you're the only one experiencing this. You think no one else has problems like you. And yeah, we have all got our own unique individual problems, but by and large, you're not. We all get that, like, not everyone, but in this situation, that feeling of loneliness, sinkingness, and loss and despair. And you think it's going to last forever as well. And it's hard to shake that mindset when you're in there. One thing I've certainly don't say to do is pour alcohol on it or anything like that, because you might see it as a quick fix. It might give you a boost of confidence at the time, but in the long run, the longevity of it, it's always going to end in bad results. So definitely don't look to other means to like drown the fires or drown the sorrow, because that's why, all it does is it comes back later. You will always have to face yourself at some point. And that's what a lot of it is facing yourself. And if you've made mistakes or you've acted out, or because people think mental health is just depression and people don't want to talk, or they stay home, or they can't move, or a fake smile. It doesn't always go like that. It can be people acting out in certain ways. They can be short-tempered, they can be rash, they can be angry, they can turn to other means to deal with the problems, and that isn't always nice to be around. That's why a lot of people I was friends with, we are no longer talking, because you can only watch so much self-destruct. You have to learn to forgive yourself as well, and then come to terms with, okay, if I made a mistake, it's not the end of the world. The other people have made these mistakes and you can own up to them. And one thing as well is, if you go and try and mend bridges, enough times pass and you feel confident enough in yourself, because don't rush that part either. Don't think, right, I'm feeling okay. You make sure that you've got where you want to be at, you're happy with, you don't have to be the exact job, housing situation, but you need to make sure that you're happy in your own head and waking up every day before you step out and try and mend bridges and try and fix things. Don't let it set you back, that sometimes people will not be so quick to forgive and forget. Depends, they could be dealing with something as well. Don't let that set you back. Don't let that hurt. And again, as I say, time is always a healer. The best thing to do is talk. See the ones that have been there from day one, your brothers, your sisters, your mum, your dad, your cousins, your best friends, whoever, they will want to help you. And the true ones will want to stick around no matter how you're feeling, not just for the laughs and the smiles. They'll want to be there. So tell them, don't just bottle it up, because you bottle it up and try and drown it out, it manifests or it comes out in the wrong way. So communication is the key, and also give yourself a break. We're all just humans. And in this crazy day and age with everything going on, we're all a mile a minute. It's really hard to, there's so much, this is how you should look to be happy because of social media. You look at Instagram with people with their lovely holidays and their cars and their brilliant jobs, and we feel like we are not living up to our own potential. Don't you dare live through other people, because guess what? Social media is a load of bullshit. It's like a video game. I could go online right now, write a status that would get 200 likes based on several topics, because it's literally a video game. It doesn't mean it's life. So that's another thing, especially for the younger people. Turn that computer off. Delete the app. You don't have to delete social media and make a big deal of it. Delete the app. Go off it for a few days. See how you feel in yourself. You don't need to impress anyone else. You don't have to live up to anyone else's expectations except for your own. And that's what you have to remember as well. Don't look online and look at what he's doing. Don't look online what she's doing. And don't look at your pals getting married and having kids. Look at yourself and see how you will be content. And if you want what they've got, don't be jealous. Envy is normal. But jealousy is when you want to take something from someone. Envy is when, I want what he has. How do I get it? How do I get next to him? That's a healthy mindset, but don't let it put you down. See it as an inspiration. But that's quite a rough start there.
No, man, I think I couldn't have wished for a better answer than this. You were short, but in a positive way. I think you told everything you had to say. Really, that was inspirational in my own view, in its simplicity. And I totally 100% agree on the social media stuff. I stay a lot on social media, but my defensive weapon against social media is I try to be what I am outside, what I am on social media. There are certain people that tell me you're different people on social media. No, fuck it. I'm the same exact guy, same black humor, same way of putting myself into situations, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I try to do. And I think it's not a mistake to say that aside of turning myself bald because of you, that's another of the things you inspired me to do. Like being myself and tell people to go fuck yourself. Ask Grado for confirmation.
Yeah, man. Sometimes it needs said, not everyone, sometimes you need to tell someone, go fuck yourself, dude. I don't need your shit. Peace.
Peace, dude. And last question I want to ask you is, you retired from the ring. So you said that you don't want to come back because you don't feel comfortable in it anymore. Like you're outside of it. You're living a different life right now. And I hope it's going to bring you happiness, just like professional wrestling did. But coming back in the past, when you step foot in the ring, what if you had to pick 3 matches that are, I wouldn't say your favorites, because it's the worst questions of all. What are your favorites? I don't think you can choose, but 3 matches that you can still think about and that put a smile on your face.
Can I give you 4?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. 1, Grado, me and Grado, at the Square Go 2016 for the title. Just the atmosphere we created in a world where kayfabe is dead. It was very much alive and well that night. So that's up there. Me and Drew Galloway the year before at the same event, the Square Go. He's just to actually have went in the ring, and the fact he's the champion now, that's something that I've wrestled a WWE champion, and that's quite cool. That's a very good fact.
Yeah, it's the current champion, so.
Yeah, exactly. So me, BT Gunn versus Paul London, Brian Kendrick in Newcastle when they beat us for the tag titles. And that's one of those, you meet your heroes and they're 10 times better than you expect, like as human beings and wrestlers. And like Brian Kendrick, I've only wrestled the one time. Paul, I've been lucky enough to like meet in different shows through the world, and you cannot meet a cooler sounder dude. And it's been a while since I've spoken to him, but he is just the most down to earth, tremendous human, and it's very understandable why he didn't make it in that horrible wrestling world in WWE, because he's way too kind and way too dynamic a soul to do that, and I can't speak highly enough of him. And the last one, I would have to say Scottish Rules match versus DCT, because that was just...
Which one? The first one or the second?
First
First
one in the garage when he was chasing me with the dildo helicopter, and this guy, it was absolute insanity. And DCT as well, who was a replacement for that match as well. The fact that I was able to help him jump up a level as well and just have the best time just makes it a really good day in the office.
Yeah, DCT has had a crazy time in Australia. I think is in shape. He fought great matches. He's improved a lot. That was good. Man. One extra question. I would ask you to send a message to our common friend, Dicky Divers, because I can't end the interview without you sending a message to Dicky Divers.
Dicky Divers, right? It's been 10 years and I still beat him. Here's another one. His team played my team in the cup final recently. And guess who won again? Because I always win. He will always be Robin. I will always be Batman. He will always be microwavable leftovers, and I'm fine cuisine. Divers, mate, with a face like that, you're always going to be designed for radio.
With a face like that, you're going to always look like a pedo. I'm just joking. I'm a fan of Dicky Divers. I don't know him personally, but I've loved their confrontations.
It's been a good natured feud for 10 plus years now, so
I've always loved their confrontation. I recently saw again the shoot interview you had. It was late, about 20 minutes. He entered, he talked for 2 minutes, and then you beat the shit out of each other.
What you do, man?
So this was the interview to Chris motherfucking Renfrew. It was an honor and a privilege for me to have the Sultan of Silent Hill on the podcast. Been looking forward to this. For those who don't know, Chris Renfrew has a Patreon. Subscribe his Patreon. He does a really good and like full of information podcast. Is also covering the history of ICW, and you know, he has a lot of knowledge, guys. He inspired Big Demo. You now know him as Killian Dane at NXT. So fuck it, this man is awesome, and I thank him for the time he gave me. And
it was an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
And see you next time. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and fuck off, wankers.